Hello and welcome to Stampscapes Friday Night Live. We're going to test out some of the new orb stamps. I have pre-stamped them onto some glow-in-the-dark sticker paper, which you don't have to do, but it just adds an extra element in terms of having some extra kind of in-the-dark lighting effects. All right, so again, you can stamp them just directly into the scene and they would, you just allow them to remain light without darkening them out and they'll look illuminated. But I like the glow in the dark too, so it's really fun. All right, let's get into the scene here. I was pre-stamping the scene out, but then I totally smudged it up, so I'll just use this as a layout right here for this one. And I don't know, just taking a look at them, some of those orbs are a little bit too big for the compositions, so we'll alter that slightly. I've made this brick pathway. It's still a little bit kind of rugged looking, rustic, I should say, not rugged, but so you can use it in like a forested, kind of park situation or something like that. But I wanted to have a little bit more of a paved look to go with some of these things like street lights and things like that. More of a, I don't know, not a manicured, but kind of a designed landscape situation. Thus the paver stones. All right, let me see if I can get through this relatively quickly because this ink will take a little bit of time to dry as well, so we'll use some heat setting on it. This is a 6" by 8.5" piece of semi-gloss cardstock. I like the semi-gloss cardstocks because you get the smoothness or a little bit more of a sealed finish than a matte paper. So you get more contact with your imagery and there's more media retention on the surface because it's a little bit sealed. Okay, it's a lot closer to matte, I would say, than gloss, but it has enough tooth to it, therefore to where you can use colored pencils on it. Okay, but then things like dye-based inks aren't gonna soak into it so thoroughly because it's, matte is going to be uncoated completely. The matte coat is going to be better if you're going to build up things like pastels or colored pencils, things that, media that requires a little bit more tooth to it. But this is kind of a good, kind of a, all right, intermediate zone for different types of media if you use multimedia like I do on your pieces. Okay. Hello, Linda, Sherry, Bonnie. Good to see you all. Glad you like them, Sherry. I will be getting, I keep saying this, I'll be getting some new perfect stamps out to you all that ordered, especially like the set 48. And now I found another lantern, but it's every other sheet because my rubber guy made 2 sheets for each plate. And there's one lantern that's kind of sunken on one of the matrix boards that he made. It's like, oh my god, I didn't see it because it's every other one and mine was fine. But that's the first time. I don't think he's made 2 molds for my sets in the past, but he just said he did it because he wanted to get my order out faster. Anyway, that being said, we'll get those out to you guys soon as possible. I'd hoped everyone would be, that wanted to, would be stamping now. You could with the rest of the stamps, but just those 3 whales. Okay, so I'm doing these lanterns right here. These ones are going to be glow in the dark, and I'm going to be putting that vinyl right over the top of them, but I'm doing this just for kind of placement right here. All right, let's see. I couldn't wait to use these illuminated elements in the scenes. It gives me an excuse because like a really cool scene that would look completely a little bit more surreal or off-world or whatever would be have several moons and a sky, but you know we're doing one, so you know, like these little orbs like this. Okay, so I'd have a moon up in the sky. By the way, I've stamped out this moon onto one of my pieces of vinyl, but I wanted it behind this gazebo, so of course all you have to do is stamp out that part of that gazebo right on your moon, and then when you put the sticker right in here, you just match it up like that. And it's going to be raised, you know, the moon's over the gazebo, but it looks like it's behind the gazebo, and that makes it, you know, just an easy process. I'm not going to do something like, I don't even know how you can do it. You'd have to, like, cut out this moon with an X-Acto knife right through the surface of this page. Put this down in there so it's flush if you want to stamp that just completely clean over the top of it, you know, otherwise there's going to be that ridge. So I just put this moon right over the top like that and just make my life, you know, a lot easier like that. Okay? So that'll go on like that. Okay. So let's see. We have our orbs down like this. Okay, I wasn't going to do this, but let me grab another, oh yeah, the orbs underwater would be cool. I want to do, so these orbs are like here. I want to do a lot of these lanterns in different types of settings. I was telling someone that actually they live in Tennessee, so there's a lot of caves out that way. So they stamped out they replicated, it's a mother-daughter, and I think the sister of the mom, or something like that. They stamped together, I guess. So they stamped out like a glowworm cave of all things. I thought I was talking to them, and I said, "You guys really stamped that out?" Yeah, it's a really niche type of scene, but I didn't know they cave, you know, and or used to. And I was telling them, what I'm getting at is, I was telling them I want to use some of these orbs or just any of these lanterns in a cave situation, so it gives me an extra excuse to put lighting in these kind of darker areas, you know, in a scene. Okay, now these orbs are going to get covered over with these cutouts that I'm going to be doing in here. So these are just for placement, so you can just put this grass texture right over the top of them. It doesn't even look like it's inside them, though, but you could, you know, even if there was like a real definitive kind of grass texture in here. It doesn't matter because you're going to just put something right over the top of it anyway. All right. Should I go multiple size textures here? Let's do that. This one's a slightly taller texture here. And then I'll use the sedge filler right here. Let me see, I just re-inked my pad so it's a little bit juicy, so I'm going to get some of this off the perimeter here so that when I stamp it out, it's not really, it doesn't have a real strong edge to it. I'm going to kind of curve this down slightly right here. I probably should have done that over here. It's done slightly, but sometimes that adds to, you know, a little bit more of a varied look. like that. Okay, let's do it like that instead of just going straight across, which I did in my first layout one right here. Hello, Cynthia. Hello, Sharita. How are you? Happy Friday to you all. Yes. All right. Let's see here. I've been using this. I've been using my winter ash tree a lot with these first tests. Because I like the fact that you can put whatever color leaf or blossom on bare trees. Sometimes I like to see how a scene's going, what kind of color scheme and what kind of textures we're looking at. And I mean, you can just leave the tree, you know, without any type of you know, additional coloring or texturing or anything like that. But what's nice about them is that they're kind of an open palette for you know, doing anything you want onto them. You know, as far as paint pens go, you can make it winter, spring with white and maybe pink blossoms or whatever color blossoms you want. Green, you know, for summer, I guess. And then you can certainly do fall tones in there. I haven't done a fall scene in a while, have I? All right, let's see. Okay, let's go. Let's go low with this one. You ever only need half of the design inked up, but you ink up the wrong side because you're like this and you're inking it up, but oh yeah, we got to flip it over. You wouldn't think I'd still do that after whatever. How long have I been stamping for? 30 some odd years, but it still happens to me once in a while. It's like, oh yeah, this is a reverse whatever application medium. When you order your plates from the engraver, you have to designate, you know, the standard things like, do you want the engraving to be right reading or wrong reading? Okay, so if your imagery that, let's say we send in an image of, you know, this tree or something like that, when they print it onto a plate, do you want this to be inset, like reversed, or do you want it to be wrong reading and raised or lowered or whatever? So you have two choices on those two things. And one time I was thinking, okay, this gets confusing. So let me see, if it's right reading in the mold, then it's going to be wrong reading in the or right reading on the plate. It's going to be wrong reading on the mold. And then when you press rubber to it, it's going to be right reading again. And I was thinking, okay, that's correct. But I forgot about the impression because we do it one more time, so it gets reversed again. That was just one time when I sent in for some new plates. It's like, I sent it, luckily it was like 3 of them. I mean, I could have made those stamps and had them, you know, just an opposite version of the stamps. But at the time, we were doing mostly wood-mounted stamps, so I would have had to buy more labels that way, so I didn't do that. But one of them was the Old Mill Large. Okay, let me see. I just reorganized all of my stamps in my binder here. Like I had like 100 stamps stacked in a big pile on my desk. But of course, the one that I'm looking for, I just noticed here, is still on my desk right here. Here's the smaller ash tree. What happened? Maybe I ran out of room in that pack, or just figured I was going to be using this one a lot. Okay, let's see. When I clean up, I can't find anything. Here we go. I'm looking for this one right here, this block with the tack and peel on it. All right, here we go. Winter ash, small, I think. All right. Sorry, folks, I should have had this all stamped out before I started here, just so you don't have to watch me kind of going through and looking for things. All right. All right, so that's my foundation right there. That's how I put together these things typically. And I start looking now at kind of like open spaces like this a lot, unless I'm working around some figure, hey, I want to use this character in a scene or this animal or something like that. Then I'll leave space. But a lot of times it's kind of the layout like this. Then I'll think, oh, let's, this would be a good spot, or I can have some figure walking up this walkway or something like that, or I look to each side of here in like the largest open areas. I usually wouldn't put a subject matter or something like that, like way in the corners, because I usually darken them in. So I look at kind of open spots for, I don't know, whatever focal point, landing spot opportunities, because it would usually be like a person or an animal or something like that. I could put in some additional filler stamps in here too, like some rocks, because there's a lot of monotony going on with all of these, this big open area of, or this big field of grass. I mean, we do have the orbs in here that are different, but there's still a lot of space. And like right in here, I'll probably put in some foreground grasses or something like that. I could do leaves, or I can do like the reeds large, which I always do, but it's a really good, I don't know, shape to put in the foreground, because it's related to the grasses that are in here. So this one puts some of those grasses like really close to us, and it really frames off the scene really nicely. Like that. Okay, so with that being said, this kind of would eliminate me from putting something down here typically. So it's like right here and right here, or even like a little spot like here, right here. I can put a little figure back in the distance like that, because everything's leading back to this point right here. But it's a gazebo, and I'm thinking about having it backlit. But there's still some opportunity for something a little bit more interesting in terms of like a living, figure or something like that, an animal or a person, so you do things like that, And there's a lot of stuff going on in here, but if you have like some kind of living creature, as long as it's not like completely in a shroud of darkness, it's going to be the thing that people's eye usually goes right to. Or it'll be one of those things, you'll lead in right to the gazebo, and then you'll go back to, these little figures that you might want to put into a scene. I don't know. And nothing stands out completely to me, like really obvious that I'd want to put in here. So we'll just leave it at that for right now, and I'll just see how this kind of develops as I go along. All right. All right. You're trying to ink your stamp, but forgot to take the lid off the page. I think that's happened to me at like a convention or something like that once in a while. It's like you go like this, or it's, yeah. Or with this one right here too, like if I'm using like a bottle green or some other color that's really similar in value at least. It's like I'll stamp out something with the wrong color. It's usually instead of black. Okay, we're gonna put some foundation around some of these figures in here. Now these are going to be illuminated right here, so kind of putting some shadow down here probably doesn't make sense. It probably should be the opposite. It probably should be lighter right in there and darker around here if it's going to be illuminated. But the thing is, for me, when I'm doing these kind of glow-in-the-dark types of things, most of the time people are going to be looking at a scene or a card that you might give them if you're giving it to someone else. Most of the time, they're not going to be taking it and looking at it in the dark, okay? It's going to be out, on display or whatever, Some people put, our handmade cards on display for a little bit of time, so... So the card has to look kind of better to me in the light. And for me, the dark part of it, the glow-in-the-dark part, is just kind of more of a, like a little bonus feature of the piece, okay? So that what I'm saying is, so that's why I'm kind of adding in this shading right in here. It anchors those types of objects down. Now, right underneath each one of these trees, do you see what I'm doing? I'm kind of tapping this down here a little bit. And then what I'm doing is I'm tapping it down like this, and then I'm working out from that area like that. So it's going from darker, and then it's going lighter like that, okay? And that's what's happening on each one of these, like that. And this one right here, as it goes more in the distance, it's more of a horizontal thing, but when you get closer, then you can kind of direct the shadow a little bit more, like down, top to bottom too. But see how it anchors these pieces into the scene a little bit more. And see, I can put some of this right over the top of this because I'm going to be covering those up with the glow-in-the-dark vinyl. I mean, you can color it like this too, and I think it look really cool too. Just retains some of that lighter aspect of it right in there. So it looks like, if these are supposed to be glowing orbs, There's those kind of cool landscaping, I don't know what they're called. I guess I don't know, are they called orbs? They're just like that chrome ball that you put into like a garden. I don't know if you put like several. It's usually like, I see it as like one in the center of like a planter box or something like that usually. But that, these could be something like that. It'd be kind of cool to stamp them on silver cardstock as well and just put them in there like one of those decorative orbs. But these ones are supposed to be like these, like crackle glass type of LED ones with a bunch of little LEDs on the inside. That's what I saw. And that's what these images are based around. It would be cool if I had like these in a little bit of a smaller one to go back in here. You can see right here, I put it like this. Those ones back there, they're too big for this pathway right here because this is going back in perspective. So this is like double, like the size of it back there. So this, the orb would be like half of this size really in order to go back there. I do have these other ones that are a lot smaller, like this, that could have worked, but these ones are really more of like a hanging lantern, or you can put them upside down like that. But they wouldn't match these ones so much, so I didn't use this small one. I mean, I still could, but yeah, we'll just go with the 4 for right here, right now. All right, let's see. I'm going to have to heat set this here because I just know this ink is really going to smear on me. This one's going to get kind of smudgy too when I start inking it up, so don't be too alarmed from that. I just re-inked my my pad so it's super juicy. So even if I dry this completely, there's going to be a little bit of the residual dried ink on the surface, so that when I go in here with some additional inks, alcohol, and dye, it's probably going to get a little bit smudgy. But I want this scene to be dark anyway, so, you know, shouldn't matter too much. Candy likes her wood-mounted stamps. I've been getting orders for more wood-mounted stamps, which is relative because I hardly get orders for that at all usually. But I have this one customer that their customers still like wood-mounted stamps to some degree at least, you know. So I've been making a lot more wood of late. But again, that's relatively speaking because I haven't really been doing a whole lot of that for, you know, a pretty long time. I've been wondering if it's kind of the nostalgia of it or something like that, nostalgic aspect of it. But some of these I think are new kind of stampers too, so I don't know. One person isn't, but yeah, I don't know. It's been interesting to me. Okay, let me see. I don't even know what the color scheme I'm going to be doing in here. Okay, so these orbs, I want these orbs to be kind of goldish toned in here, okay? So I think I'm going to lay down some, I don't know, maybe summertime drier kind of look in here. I don't think I want to make it look plush green or something like that. I think it would clash a little bit with these golden tones like this a little bit. I don't know if it'd clash, but I think it would just harmonize a little bit more with colors out of that in here somewhere as well. And then we'll do that moon back in here, and we'll see how dark we go up top like that. So Linda and Bonnie say they want to see how I work here. It's like, thing about here is that's the way I'm thinking about it in the moment. Yeah. I might do this zine again and there's like a different approach, not completely, but certain things. And if I was to do something like this again, I would probably change it up a little bit, just so, I don't know, just to kind of break monotony. All right, so let's see here. I'm thinking about warm tones here, even though it's going to be a moonlit scene. But let's have this kind of warmer foundation. Let me see if I have enough ink in my desert sand memento here. I don't have a re-inker for that, I don't think. I think the only re-inker I have for mementos is the blue summer sky, if I still have that. Here's London fog. Anyway, let's give this a try here. Okay, so, but speaking of this foundation here, I might be adding in some more imagery. In fact, I probably will, but let's just, we'll start right here. And you can still add, you know, additional imagery, as long as you want, until you start adding in things like, you know, if you do alcohol ink or colored pencils. If you want to stamp it out in dye-based inks, at least. I guess we can always stamp it. If we're going to do something in black, I guess we can always stamp out, you know, something in StazOn. Okay, but see that right there? That's getting a lot darker. It's starting to, some of that is picking up that black from this tree here. Okay, here's what I'm thinking about right here. So this area right in here is kind of like, you know, it's prime real estate if we want to put in something like an animal or a deer or something like that in there, or a person. So I'm going to leave that area illuminated. But even if I don't, it's better to have, you know, some kind of variation in terms of values too. So see, this is getting dark right here. If this whole thing is dark, it's getting really monotonous. And I'm going to have this moon back up in here too. Okay. It's going to be going like this. So we want to have some light down in here reflecting that cast light of the moon too. So, but even if it wasn't there, you know, it's better to always mention that kind of oscillating your lights and darks, checkerboarding your surface to make for some easy visual variety. The easiest thing to create variety across the surface, in my opinion, it's with values. Light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. Okay. Now this is a pathway right here, this thing, this walkway, this paver stone walkway. You know, so I want it largely illuminated, but if I just have this all lit up, it gets a little monotonous. So see, I'm coming down here and adding that dark, and then we have this area light right here. Let's come over here and make this a little bit, it doesn't have to be like super dark, but see, this is like a little bit darker right here. And then I have this illuminated, there's a little bit of ink right here. So it's like light, darker, light, darker, light, darker, like that. But again, we want it largely illuminated. So even if you put down a little bit of tone on there, just to get it, just to go for some variation, it can still be lighter than, you know, the surrounding area here. So if it gets confusing, like, hey, I don't, you know, how dark do you make it, you know, and how do you know how you know, if you've gone far enough? If you just kind of, see, every time I do this, I don't know the answers to that until I do it in each scene. So I just start adding in, this is the lightest color possible right now. Now it's mixing with a bunch of black, so it's getting like this sooty, you know, darker version of this desert sand. Okay, but still it's a really light ink. So I'm just adding down, I don't know, it's like a, I don't know, a really super light tone like that. And I'm just, you know, I'm just going a little bit darker and a little bit darker the more I lay down here. And this is really important too, to be able to see things. You have to kind of hold it out at arm's distance and to see the lighting kind of effects, or if it's one area is like a little bit too light, or if you just like it, okay, this looks pretty cool here because it's making this a little bit lighter by contrast by making this darker. If you want to make it a little bit darker, then you add in more like this, okay? But you're just adding like a few percent values at any given time. It's not like we're working with anything really dark where it's going like, whatever, 40% gray, 80% gray, 90% gray, and it's like completely dark in there. It's just like a really light tone, so a few taps like that might make it, I don't know, 5% darker maybe, or something like that. So you can just work really slow, in other words. Okay, so that is that with the desert sand in that lower area. I think I'm gonna put some of this up top too. I think I'll go with some darker bluish tones up there maybe, I don't know, for like a night sky. Night skies don't have to be like whatever, blues and blacks or anything like that. You can make it any color you want. So I'm gonna change to this to get more of a pure tone down here. I think it's gonna, some of this black is gonna come off too. Probably not quite as much though, because these limbs up here are a lot more, whatever, small and delicate. I'm getting a lot of that tone that came off of the buildup of ink on those trunks down there. That's why everything down there got really dark. But it'll probably still get a little bit smudgy, so I expect that. If there's something that happens, with just about every scene that I do, or a lot of them, in terms of a technique, I don't know. I don't sweat it anymore. I just kind of, it's like, okay, if that gets all smudgy up there, I'll just make it darker or something like that. Or I'll just add in colored pencil, to get a little bit of a pure look. Or if it gets too dark, you just add in some white pigment ink over the top of it. So all right, so not too bad. You can see it's a little bit more of that pure color than down here, where I was covering a lot of imagery stamped out in that tone. All right. I do like the purity of color, though, that I see in a lot of people's pieces. That I don't seem to be able to achieve with my methodology. Like sometimes you see people's posts on Facebook and it's just like every ink and every region is just so pure of tone, of hue. And it looks really good. Mine's like more like murky. So see, it reflects our, our pieces, kind of our color schemes reflect our, kind of our spirit personalities. So mine's much more of, let's say, a murkier kind of a, shadowy in type. We'll have to do sometime. How people do. What is that? What's that study of handwriting analysis? We'll do a study of like stamping analysis sometime. Okay, blue, just a really light pale blue. It's the I'm using. Did I just use aqua? I think I used aqua. Aqua's really similar to Aqua's the Adirondack Lights. Color by Ranger Industries. I think it's really similar to the Tumbled Glass Distress Ink by the same company. All right, so there we go. I'm leaving this a little bit of a glow right up here. The moon's going to go right here, so I'm not doing this kind of this perimeter glowing area very well. But I'll just go with that. I'm leaving it a little bit light in here. If you leave some white too, you leave kind of more opportunity for some of the white pigment ink. If you get rid of all your white in your pieces, sometimes adding that kind of that white pigment ink kind of looks strange because it ends up being kind of the lightest or whitest thing in the entire scene. And what that fog kind of represents is it represents reflective light, you know, reflecting off some moisture in the air. So sometimes, I mean, you can do that. Sometimes, you know, I use white pigment ink on colored papers a lot of times, and sometimes those don't have any white on it to begin with, you know, but just in general, it's easier to use with some of that retention of the same, you know, hue. I don't know, it's white's not a hue, but you know, that same visual element in there of white. Okay, so I'm adding some of this down here, but we'll kind of turn this area down here more just for variation. It wouldn't be like green at nighttime, but just for a little bit of variety in the scene. We'll go with some of the peeled paint. Let me just use the same applicator here. This is really spreading out. I think this peeled paint is really wet here, so I'm gonna do a little bit of a different stroke in here. And plus the paper is getting a little bit moist from all the other colors that I put on here. So when I apply this, it's not absorbing into the paper as much, so it's spreading out more. So remember to, you know, if you're doing this kind of this, you know, multi-layered buildup of color like this, remember to kind of change the rate of your application rate, because you're working on a different type of paper from one ink to the next, because it's getting, you know, when you first start off, you're applying onto a very absorbent dry piece of paper, and maybe by the time you maybe get into like the third color or something like that, you're putting in moisture on top of moist, you know, moist and less absorbent. All right, certainly dreary looking, huh? There's no brightness to it at all. But we'll bring in our brighter tones with some additional inks or colored pencils. Okay, let's see here. Let's use these two colors right here. I want to go pretty dark with this piece here, just because I do want that darker type of look, you know, for that moon to stand out a little bit more. And then we'll go in here with these blue tones right here. I went in there quite a bit. I'm losing some of my white in there, which happens, and happens to me too. I'm always telling you to retain your kind of lighter areas, because I'm always telling myself that too. Okay. After doing a couple of reflection cards recently with the new stamps, those get really addictive. So I tend to want to do those like, you know, like constantly, more and more. So even with this one right here, I was thinking, okay, if I put like this water down here, it's like this path going down to the water or pond or something like that. But I thought, let's just make this one just a straight card here. that was the Salvia Blue. It'd be kind of similar to the Memento Summer Sky if I didn't mention that. Summer Sky is quite a bit lighter though, and it's thicker ink, so it doesn't penetrate all these layered inks on here as easily as the Marvy inks, which are thinner. So I like going thick, and then I like applying thinner inks on top. If you don't have Marvy inks, just allow this to set up a little bit in order to allow you to add more ink on top of it, because it does start to get kind of super saturated with ink. So you're going on with, you know, a damp sponge or whatever your applicator is, and you're tapping in, it's like, this isn't changing like at all. Well, it's because the surface and the pulp of the paper is already getting really saturated with moisture, so you need to allow that moisture to absorb and to evaporate a little bit. And then it'll accept additional media on top of it, wet media on top of it. Or you can heat set a little bit. Don't dry it out completely though, because it's good to have it a little bit moist, because it's easier to blend kind of each incrementally darker tone into, you know, a little bit of a damp, slightly damp surface, rather than just absolutely dry where it's grabbing the ink like instantly. Like I can go like this. I've shown this a lot of times. Okay, so I'm going with this ink right here. I'm just really trying to put a big, you know, splotch in there, but it just blends out completely because, you know, the surface is moist or a little bit damp. Not super moist, but damp, you know, or mildly damp. Okay. That was the Caribbean Blue. Mine is getting a little bit super saturated. It's not going in there completely, you know, applying in there. So I'm trying to get it with a little bit more repetition, kind of building up like this. A little bit more, you can see that right there. So if you tap it like that, you'll get these little buildup of a little micro kind of balls of ink on there. Beads, not balls. All right, let's see. I want to get into my colored pencils on here, but let's go darker down below first with the, as far as I can go with the dye-based inks. Because once again, if I try to apply wet water-based media over waxy colored pencils, it's not going to really apply. So you got to, you know, you want to get kind of as much as you can done with your inks first before moving into things like, you know, colored pencil, waxy colored pencils, or alcohol inks. Dark green right here. Okay. So that's really kind of anchoring down these trees, isn't it? Right there with that extra kind of shadow work in there. Tapping it more right at the base right here, and then you kind of work your way out like that. You maybe use a lighter touch like that, so it's going from dark to lighter out there. So you get that transitioning value scheme like that. Okay, see this right here is kind of a the gazebo's anchored down in shadow as well. Just go like that, and it's like sitting in the scene a little bit more visually. And we'll go all the way to black, I think, right in here. This is the color right here that I've been fooled at times, mostly when I'm doing like demonstrations at conventions or something like that, where, you know, we don't have as good a lighting too, but sometimes I've stamped something out in this bottle green right here, and it's like, Okay, I'm going to stamp this out in black, and I stamp it out in this green. This bottle green is really dark, though. See that right there? It really, I don't know, I think it's a thinner ink, too, so it really penetrates. It penetrates kind of moist areas very easily. There's a few colors like that. Prussian blue is like that. It's like I'm trying to build up colors and colors, and and then I get to a couple different colors, and it's like, oh my god, that it really transferred over really fast and easily. Like, I don't know, 3 times as much as some other inks. I have a feeling that the density is a little bit different with certain colors. Okay, that's green right there. Let's go to black here. Hello, Laura. How's your weather, Laura? You were in like a lot of rain, was it this last week? Or was that last weekend? Laura and I are in this scenic exchange group that started with what was her name? Joan Ware? Yeah, Joan Ware. Years ago. Laura joined it, I don't know, a few years ago, has it been? But she sent the group a photo of her, like a 360 view photo of her area. That looked really cool. It's like the open plains, with like a straight horizon. I thought that looks really cool. I like a lot of variety in my terrain usually. Like when I've traveled places, if I'm gone somewhere for like, oh, I don't know, a few days or something like that. Like when I was in like Florida or something like that, certain area of Florida, but it's like no change in elevation like at all from a visual standpoint. But I was thinking, man, that looks really cool in that photo, though. It made me want to go there and see. Okay, adding that additional shading here with black. Okay, so I'm trying to, again, not get this really super definitive thing like this going, like that, where it's just solid. So I want that kind of tapering off like this, transitioning from darker to lighter. So what you do is you just kind of go like this in one area, and then you guys kind of, you go in whatever direction you're going. Okay, so you don't tap hard, Some people say, hey, I got too heavy a hand, I just can't tap lightly. Well, if you do that, then what you do is instead of just going straight in here with a freshly inked up applicator or whatever you're using, a sponge, then just tap off a lot before you go on there. And you can use a heavier hand because there won't be as much ink on your, your applicator. Now it might drive you nuts because usually if you have a heavier hand, you're wanting to get ink down faster a lot of times, so you think, a lot of people think that by tapping more or harder is going to apply more, which might be the case with like a matte cardstock, because you're smushing the ink down into the pulp of the paper. But sometimes if you're wiping harder on glossy cardstock, if there's a buildup of ink, you might be wiping off the color because it's just sitting on the surface. That's why it's not applying very easily. It's because the surface is just so saturated with ink. So yeah, sometimes applying, you have to tap more like this lighter to get those little beads of ink on there, as opposed to tapping harder, which is removing the ink. All right, let's go with some additional tone. Let's keep this one right here. Applicator. And let's go to blue up top here. It's kind of getting that tone down, you know, a little bit now. It's kind of coming alive a little bit more, just in terms of the contrast, I guess, down below. I mean, these things look like they're glowing a little bit more. If you just joined in, those orbs down there are going to be replaced with, not replaced, but just overlap with these glow-in-the-dark versions of them that I'm going to cut out of there and put into the scene. Okay, this is getting a lot drier up here now because I haven't worked up here in a few minutes. So you can see how fast that next tone of blue applied in there. It's kind of like a navy. It's almost kind of applying too fast. It's kind of a little bit, it's transferring instantly, so I'll use a lighter touch and I'll just switch up here in terms of my, whatever method. I'll go with more of a little light swirly action, maybe. Which I wouldn't want to do with the first color down here because that tree was still a little bit wet and I'd be smearing everything too much, okay? So you just kind of mix it up depending on whatever the current state of the card. Right. A little bit of a navy blue tone. More of the first stamps used with the new, the first, I don't know, whatever release of stamps with the newer ones. Well, that's the thing about these lighting things, they can go with anything. I want to use, I have these new lanterns now too that I want to use with, I definitely want to use it with the mystical imagery, which aren't what some of the first stamps used or anything like that, but older. All right, here's black. Let's see if we can add that in right here. It's still a little bit, that's not as dark as I usually like to have it before I get to black, but let's just go ahead and add that black in there right now. I want to get to some other inks besides these dye-based ones right here. So I'm using black, but I'm never really achieving coming to complete black. It's more of a, I don't know, whatever, maybe a 50% gray like that. So you can see the difference between this side and this side. You can see how much more kind of framed off this is up here from using the same color that I stamped out my imagery in. So I often go to black, if not always, whenever I'm in a scene, or in a composition like this. And I'm trying to kind of integrate everything. To me, it integrates with the color that you stamped out your imagery in. And you might say, well, hey, aren't you always using black to stamp out your imagery? Yeah, it's like 99.9% of the time. Not everything might not be stamped out in black. I might do background images and lighter toned colors out of my color scheme, but sometimes I'll stamp out once in a while if I'm doing like this misty, hazy kind of composition where it's supposed to look like, you know, something like a real foggy environment. I might stamp out all my imagery in something lighter than black, okay? And then in that case, usually I won't use, black is too heavy on the perimeter for that vignette. So I just go up to the whatever color, gray or whatever, was used with the darkest image that's in the composition. But I don't know, I rarely do something like that. That scenario. All right, so anyway, framed off a little bit more, 4 corners with the black like that. I want some more black in there, but I think, I'll be able to get a much more detailed application with the pens or the colored pencils. Hello, Julia, how are you? Middle of moving. Oh. You have our thoughts are with you on that. Moving is such a hassle. Such a big event. All right, let's see here. This is still a little bit damp. I don't know if you can tell. You can see it's a little shiny over here. Let's get this a little bit dry for these colored pencils. I don't like... It's easier to apply these colored pencils into something that's a little bit, a little bit drier. I looked on the back just out of curiosity. Sometimes I'm curious to see if I make some scenes like really sopping, wet with I don't know, whatever, several layers of wet media. Usually it's dye-based inks. I'm kind of curious to see if it ever soaks through, but it never does. I never see that happen on here. But I guess I do keep checking. There was a lot of ink that was applied in these darker areas. Okay, so you can see on here, it's not really rich looking. It has a range of values in here, but there's no range of intensity. It's like kind of dull everywhere, so if this was like dull right here, and this is like super saturated and bright over here, this is the intensity scale, okay? So value scale, it's like this, dark and light. Intensity is bright and dull. Everything on this is like from middle ground to down. This is like, as bright as it gets right there. So remember, bright is different than light. Okay, bright is, like I said, it's the relative intensity of something. Where, light and dark is the relative, lightness of something. So you can see right here, we're getting a little bit richer with this green colored pencil right here. I still am thinking about stamping something right in here, so I'm going to leave that a little bit as is for right now. I'm kind of going in here and looking for some of these textural areas that were stamped out with the wavy grass right here. So I'm looking, like you can see those wavy grasses right in here. So this is already fairly dark in there. So going into it with like a really light pencil won't show up too much. You can get it brighter though, but see this, I'm just kind of going in here and just reiterating. You're putting dark touches of shading right into these dark impressions right here. Okay, I can't see them too much, but I can see this one little one right here of that wavy grass. So there's another one right there. See that right here? I don't know if you can see it, but see right there how that tone right there? Here, I'll kind of emphasize it a little bit more. Yeah, can you tell right there that that area is kind of glowing a little bit more? But that's the way it looked right here before. And this isn't, you wouldn't think of this olive green as something that's really bright, but you can see just what that looks like in here. It's just so much richer of a value. So what you've done, but we don't want everything just vibrating with super brightness. You could, but the thing that looks good about some of these areas is that you get a little bit more of a brighter tone, contrasting up against a duller tone like that. So everything is like really dull in there, so that this color right here that isn't very bright, it just looks so much brighter by contrast. Now let's see if we can really kind of brighten it up a little bit more with this yellow green, which is a warmer tone to begin with. And I'll add a little bit of that in here and see how it looks. You can even put it in the shadows. It's not going to make these shadow areas look lighter, but again, you can turn up the intensity of that area, the saturation a little bit like that in there. It's almost looking too bright now. Okay, so it was really dull, it's really super bright, but I'm working up through my color schemes into some darker tones anyway. So let's see, here's a bit of a green, dark green. I'm kind of putting some tone right against this pathway to make it stand out a little bit more. The pathway definitely needs to get colored in though, which I'll be doing here. But I just want to make it stand out a little bit more too. And then we'll go into the black. And then the black will neutralize or maybe that's not the word, but it'll de-emphasize some of that brightness in there a little bit. Okay. I kind of like that in there. Let's leave that as is. You can go in and add more shading if you want to your tree, like that. All right, something like that. I'm thinking about that dough. I held it up there before. Let's see. I left kind of a spot like it right in here, but see, this animal's like looking, I don't know, it's looking kind of this way at us. It's kind of going off the scene, but its head isn't pointed that way, so maybe it's like walking there and it turns around and sees us. I usually like to have things kind of going into the scene like this, though, but this might not look bad right there. Okay, let's do it, I think, before I add any ink or anything over there. Okay, this is supposed to be like some, some grass, not like the putting green or something like that, but reasonably deep. So what I do is I wipe off some of the feet so that those don't stamp out, so that it looks like the animal is in the grass a little bit more. And I might be stamping it over some built-up ink in there. Don't put a huge amount of pressure on these small images, though. Don't squash them. Otherwise you may get a little bit of a squashed image. Not necessarily with this one, but some of the more delicate animals like little birds or something like that. You don't want like a smashed version of those types of animals. All right, so that is that. Let's go into this pathway right here. I'm not sure what pathway color I'm gonna do. Let's take a look at some of the orbs here. Okay, so this is gonna be kind of like a golden color. So let's put, I don't know, like a brick tone maybe, and then some warmer tones like this, perhaps, into this scenario right here. Okay, I don't want to go too dark, though, again, because I still want this to be a nice visual lead-in in here. In fact, that might be a little bit dark right there. I like having some of these tones in the surrounding areas to harmonize with the surroundings. So some blues are down in the grassy areas. I don't have, you know, greens up in the sky, but I have some of the blues from the sky down in this area. Let's put some of this color up top here like this, maybe. And there's some sunbrella material furniture right in here. Isn't that what it's called? Sunbrella. Okay, here's some brown, darker brown. So kind of retaining these lit areas. I should have left that illuminated a little bit more, but I'll show you what I just, you know, how I recover that with a white pigment ink. Okay, now let's get some of this tone in here. Some of this yellowish tone, maybe that the orbs, the LED orbs are, yeah, whatever, casting some of that light. Okay, something like that, I guess. Let me try a little bit of pink in here. Not that I want pink, but it's like a lighter version of a, you know, like a reddish brick tone. Okay. Use this right here. Dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. And it's subtle, though. It's not like, you know, this is like a pure, like, black-white checkerboarding right there, but it's really subtle. But that's how you create this kind of oscillation of light like that. I mean, you could have it where it's like, you know, completely illuminated, you know, Yellow Brick Road, or, you know, what is it, Michael Jackson's Billie Jean video, you know, where it's just this illuminated walkway. Was it all illuminated, or was it just illuminated when he was stepping on those different blocks, maybe? Anyway. Okay, let's see. Okay, I need to get the gist of these. Everyone, well, anyone can watch any part of this anyway, but I was going to say, go get a drink right now because I got to cut out a few of these orbs. I would have had these cut out beforehand, but I ran out of time. This is, if you just joined in, if you haven't seen this before, this is a vinyl glow-in-the-dark sticker paper, okay, printable vinyls. The vinyl, there's printable holographic vinyls. There's printable vinyls that are just white. You know, you throw through your inkjet printer to print out things on, and you can. The adhesive aspect of this paper is reasonably aggressive, so you know you can put this, you can apply this vinyl onto things like mugs or glasses or something like that. And you know it'll stick. You can't throw it through you know dishwasher or something like that. I wouldn't think, and have it stick on. You know, retain its adhesion, but it's pretty cool. So it's you know it's not really designed for crafters. I don't know if they were thinking about people stamping on it with inks, um, but you can use any kind of water-based ink on it. Um, Thicker the better. I use Brilliance pigment ink. But these are stickers, and I'm going to put these right over the top of these right here, like that. Or one, I'll show you what I'm going to do too, I think, which might look interesting, I hope. Let's see, I only have two of the smaller ones. Let's go with the larger one right here. Oh, but so I like doing printing with my black water-based Brilliance ink to make my impressions. And it's a little bit thicker of an ink than a dye-based ink. And then I like, because it's water-based ink that I'm stamping with, you can color it, these with, like I colored this one with some additional yellow ink, and I used alcohol ink to color these with. So I colored these lanterns, like these ones right here, are in green. So that's what it just looks like stamped out, but then I put in that tone. I mean, these are different images, but you can see that greenish tone right in there. And I leave the center kind of, I leave those centers light like that. And then I put in some additional white pigment ink right over the top of that area to make it look like it glows. So it goes from this to more of a glowing look like that with some additional pigment ink, and you get really fun little elements in your scenes like that. And these ones are all glow in the dark too, so you throw off the lights and these are all glowing as well as the moon. And again, it doesn't have to be glowing like that. If you just kind of leave the area illuminated, like these ones aren't glow in the dark, but it looks like they're glowing to me. If you just do this little concentric circle right here, but these lanterns right here were stamped out on yellow kind of construction paper, and then you just put that little red in there like that. I need to do one of these again with the reds like that. This is gold cardstock down here. Oh, that figure right there that I had in that one would have been good. Like, I could put her, like, walking down this right here. I'd have to cut her out, though, now, because I didn't stamp her in there. And I didn't stamp her in there and work around her. The art supplies multiply every time we get a box full. I think we all know that feeling here. Let's see, Sharita, you like the blues on this one? They're nice and rich, aren't they? You know, when you layer them like that, with all that layering and you know the bleeding of some of that black tree impression color into it, it changes the tones. So a lot of times when it gets kind of muddier in the bottom layers like that, I try to bring in some brightness with I brought in the Caribbean blue and that number 10 blue into it, light blue with the Marvy inks like that. Okay, so let's see here. I'm gonna do this right here. I'm gonna put a little bit of a this still needs some work in here, or a lot of work, but let me see here. I'm going to try to bring a little bit more brightness into some of these areas. Here's the just some alcohol ink, okay. So just another layer of some additional tone in a different whatever vehicle in the alcohol ink. So I don't know if you can tell. Okay, so I've added that up there like that. That's all glossy like that because it's really wet right now, but I don't know if you can tell, like up in here and in here, it's getting a little bit richer. But it's not really that much darker or anything like that. It just looks a little bit more vibrant like that. And Trude was saying she likes the blues in here, but see this like really pale blue like this. Maybe this is like way too pale. Well, let me check. I'll just add it right down in here. Not much visibly difference. Yeah, I was gonna find like a little bit of a. Yeah, this one's might be a little bit too much. That's like really, really moist right there. So I'm just going to take this lighter one and just kind of blend this in a little bit like this. Now this might not blend in perfectly visually right now because it's, that alcohol ink has that kind of that waxy kind of look when it dries. But I'm going to be spray sealing all of this with a workable fixative, that acrylic coating in here, and that kind of unifies everything from a textural standpoint. So you have colored pencils, and I'll have acrylic paint pens in here, alcohol inks. At least those are the media that I like, that I've come to use a lot on semi-gloss cardstocks because I like what they bring, whatever, to the table. Dye-based inks get a lot of, you can go for a lot of coverage very quickly. They blend in with one another really nicely, but they're not great for things like detailing. That's where things like colored pencils come in, or alcohol inks. Alcohol inks are really good for brightness. So you can kind of hit certain areas with that. And then I love things like highlighting and detailing. So the acrylic paint pens. But one problem is that when you add like a new medium into your whatever repertoire with certain surfaces, it's like they come into the equation and they never leave. Before, when I first started doing this in the 90s, it was, okay, so white pigment ink. I'm going to put a little bit of a glow right around in here, or try to. That way, when I put my vinyl down on here, there'll be this little bit of a glow around it. In theory, we'll see what it looks like. But yeah, when I first started doing this, it was just like dye-based inks, and that was it. Sometime after that, we were using paint pens. Definitely not the pigment inks, although pigment inks were out there. But whenever I started using that, it was like, oh, that looks so much better, or more full to me in the ways that I was using the stamps, at least. And so that just I don't know. That one got added in. And the colored pencils are more of a recent thing. Okay, I'm not adding this everywhere around in here. I think having it a little bit more varied might look a little bit more interesting. All right, so it's something like that. All right, but again, this is going to be put right over the top of it. Yeah, it looks like it has a little bit of glow around it. And then I'm going to put some of this on top of that, so it'll hopefully kind of match a little bit more from a textural standpoint, but we'll see. There's this kind of soft glowing light on the photographs that I've seen of these types of landscaping LED orbs. They're kind of like solar orbs, I think, or solar lights. Okay. So you just peel these off like this. It's so much fun adding these stickers into your images too. It's like little kids don't have to have all the fun. Reminds me of going into stores, you know, and like at the check stand or something like that, someone asking if you know, if they have like, if they had them, they'd be asking like my son if he'd like you know, some stickers. He was never really into them that much though. So I think sometimes they'd ask and he'd say no, but I think he just started saying yes just to be just to be polite. All right, let's go in and add in some additional texturing in here. And we'll start off, or highlighting. We'll do it with these pens right in here. It's going to bring some of this in here. And then I'll go in with some additional pigment ink again. But we need that little kind of, I don't know, that little kind of element in here that'll just kind of bring a lot of these areas to life. It's kind of like dull in here again, even though it's brighter again, but you know, these little highlights like this really bring in, it balances everything off. Everything's looking kind of soft right now. And if anything, these are nice little crisp elements that you can do. You can bring in lightness with, like, okay, we're Jeannie's here. Jeannie's working late now. But Jeannie can bring in like highlights. She brings, I was just about to mention you, Jeannie. She'll bring in highlights with, you know, like things like Dr. Martens. But she'll do it with a brush, so you get this varied application of, it's not just highlights, but it's like forms, but it's not just a uniform, you know, whatever line or dot, you know, you can do it with, you know, brush work. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so you know how we work shadows out. It's darker, you know, at the source of the object that's casting the shadow. So you're going from darker to lighter out there with the dark, you know, tones like that. Darker to lighter like that. Well, this is light. These represent illuminations here. You're going from kind of illuminated to darker. So in working with this light element like this, I'm adding a few more dots and then dissipating it out, so you can kind of, you know, you can do it in repetition and or spacing like this. Okay, so it's these dots are getting more spread out like that, so there's a higher concentration of them right in here, and then it gets darker out there, or just fewer dots. Okay, so let's do it again right here. I might have got carried away a little bit with that first one, but so be it. This is where I totally smear these by tapping down in here and my hands going into these dots, but these pens dry or absorb into the surface relatively quickly, so not too bad. All right, so see this right here? These things are illuminated right here. It looks really weird because that's the only kind of areas where you have this kind of texturing. So you spread this texturing around. We're going to have this moon. Here, I'll add that up right there right now, actually, so I can reference it. Okay, if you just joined in too, I stamped this gazebo out, but I wanted this moon not out here. I mean, I could have, but I thought it'd be kind of more interesting to put this moon behind the gazebo. So you stamp out a bit of the part of the gazebo right onto this moon right here. And then you can just place the moon right over the top, and you don't have to go through any kind of like tedious kind of masking technique where we're stamping out that gazebo first and getting that moon in there. I don't want to do that, you know. Too much work. So I just stamp a bit of the gazebo on there, and I just match that right over the top of it. Yeah, that moon's sticking out right there, but, you know, I don't know. I can't really see. Here, let me get a little of this tone right in there, too, in that open area. So, you know, that vinyl's not designed for colored pencil, but you can get a little bit on there. It's no big deal. There might be a better way to do that moon behind the gazebo, but if, it probably would take, you know, it's like, I don't know, it might take me 5-10 minutes to do that instead of like, you know, 5 seconds. All right, so adding these little highlights right in here, I can now see where that moon is going to be. Kind of illuminated areas. I'm just, you might be able to use like a white pastel pencil in here too for a little bit of a different texture. It'd be a softer texture since it's going to get spray sealed anyway. You know, the sealant would lock down the texturing, the pastel texturing. Okay, this white in here kind of stands out quite a bit, so I'm going to go with some green in here, and it's darker, so you can get some darker highlights in here where maybe the white would be a little bit too much. Too much in terms of, you know, contrast and value, so you go with a darker highlight and it just doesn't stand out as much, but you get the benefit of having these little textures in there. Like, you know, they're a little bit more subtle instead of just right, you know, like really in your face highlighting. Okay, do that. A little bit of a beige tone. Animals don't pose for a scene. You're lucky to catch them. That's the beauty of, you know, the difference between stamping and photography, you know. You can put them in any position you want. Anyone ever watch those like nature or National Geographic documentaries on the photographers and how they set up all those shots of like, I don't know, like fish jumping out of the water and grabbing a, you know, like an insect or anything like that. You know, a lot of that stuff has to be in the studio, otherwise it was just impossible to catch. So Really amazing watching these things like that. I think maybe even it was it might even have been like carpenter ants or something like that. That might have been in like a studio set that they set that up in. So they kind of oscillate between you know, being out in the field or whatever, but in the close-ups it might have been you know, um, like paid actor ants. All right, adding in some extra little touches onto some of these bricks to make it look a little bit more dimensional, like that. I don't know if you can see it down here. So I've colored in, but see this, at the top of each one of these bricks, I put this little line like that. Like I can't put it in here because it's so light, but in these areas where it gets a little bit darker, you can do something like that. And it just looks a little bit more dimensional. Let's see, let's go with white so you can see it a little bit more. All right, and let's add some of these little highlights in here. Like I said, these, if you just joined in, these orbs are kind of designed after these. If you look up, I don't know what they're called, landscaping orbs or something like that. I don't know, they might come up, but it's like this bunch of like bunches of LED like Christmas lighting type of things, like a string of lights inside these orbs. And I think there's like a solar panel inside that I'm guessing, but it has this kind of more of this shattered glass look that I thought looked really cool. Okay, let me wait till that dries a little bit, and while that's drying, let's get to some of these other foreground images in here. All right, where did my, here we go. I was looking for my reeds here. Hold on the reeds. Actually, let's get to some of this other white pigment ink in here. I'm doing this before I do the reeds because I stamped those out in black, and if I want to put a little bit of this mist behind the reeds, it's going to get, those reeds are going to be wet still, so I don't want to smear those. Hello, Hodgkins. How are you? Harold is painting our craft room. Huh. Just repainting the craft room there. Hello, Janet. How are you? Janet, what time is it there for you? I probably always ask that, but you know. I don't remember the time difference. What color are you painting your craft room, the Hodgkins? That's Linda there. Okay, so here comes some white pigment ink. I love using white pigment ink. It can de-emphasize, it can emphasize. Well, I don't know if it emphasizes something. I guess it can because it puts it kind of in lighting and illumination. But see this, like the areas right in here? I mean, I think it looks okay as is, but see this where it's illuminated right in there? I'm going to put some of this like white ink right in here. See that? How it's going right in there? So you have this kind of this mist or something like that that's coming over the top of that slope now. And let's say it's kind of coming through and it's coming through this area right in here. But doesn't, I don't know, doesn't that look like it have, like there's a little bit of a different spirit to this scene now, or at least in that area, okay? Now I can put some of this right in here, okay? And let's say it's coming over the top right in there. And I'm putting too much here. And let's put it in front of, sometimes I could go into the darkest of areas here, but see how this is like coming in here? It's like illuminated now with this kind of rolling soft light right in here, right? Okay, now this pathway here got really dark, okay? I was thinking I should have left that a little bit lighter, but I don't know. I guess it does go, like the shadow of the gazebo is going to it. Not that you have to abide by that or anything, but. So what I'll do is, this is a little bit lighter right here. So this is the way I make up for, possibly making something a little bit too dark, as I just go and illuminate it again like this. But I see it as something more than just like covering up something that I maybe did a little bit too much of. I think it, from a textural standpoint, I think it just kind of all adds to it. So see this right here? I just came across in there a little bit. This is all completely uniform right here in terms of lighting and texture. So this is like a large sphere here. So what I'll do is I'll have some of that lighting kind of going into there. So see, this is just changing this a little bit. And then I'll put some of this right onto the surface of the vinyl. If you guys just joined in, this is these orbs are stamped onto a piece of or pieces of printable glow-in-the-dark sticker paper, and that type of paper or vinyl takes water-based media. So this is your water-based pigment ink right here in the Brilliance ink. So this Brilliance ink sticks to this and dries on here just fine. So this right here, I'm just kind of putting some of this lighting over here on this side. And this one's more center, this one's center too, but I think kind of putting it a little bit irregular. Here, I'll put a little bit more on this side right here, just to vary it a little bit. And then I'll try to hit one area on these orbs a little bit more. So this one's right up here, right down here and here. So it's a little bit more targeted in terms of where it's kind of glowing the most. So it's a little bit more varied. Okay, something like that. Yeah, something like that. Okay. All right, let's see. This is a big glob of darkness right there. Here's some light right here. Let's extend this light out in here a little bit more. Tap in a little bit more on the light, and then you work across it like that, so you get that transition. So see, now that, it looks a little bit better than just having that big area of darkness like right in there, okay? So I'd say you can just stretch these areas out. You can see this darkness comes in here, it's darker to lighter. Now I'm kind of working lighter to darker in some areas, which this like lighter tones of media allow you to do. Again, you can try, like I said, you can probably come over this on this paper. I don't know about, maybe if not if there's too much alcohol ink or colored pencil in here, but like I said, you might be able to use like a white pastel pencil and do these types of effects too. With pencil. I don't think a white colored pencil would really work. It just, mine doesn't. It's just it's too hard of a white to really apply. Again, here's where, see, I'm stretching some of this lightness out in here. That way I can stamp, when I stamp my reeds in there, it'll show up too. Ten 10:43 a.m. Thanks for joining in and checking it out. How are those wave scenes coming along? Neutrals, they're blending together, trying to get the shop moved home. Got it. Switch from those neutrals to like a hot pink maybe. Hot pink I think is a neutral, isn't it? Like a day glow fluorescent pink. And that would be good. And then change your light bulbs out to a like a black light. All right. People are foolish. Hello, how are you? You like to buy one of these pieces? Going once, going twice. I do put these up for on the eBay. Once in a while. I haven't done that in a while. I have a gazillion pieces. And it's not to try to make a bunch of money, but it helps pay for these things like the new designs, and plates that are coming out, or that are out. All right, adding in. When you add this white into your pieces, it goes on lighter than what it will look like when it dries. Okay, so when it's wet, see this right here up in this moon too? See how this moon is against this gazebo right here? These are, some crisp impressions on the moon, which you want. But let's say I want it a little bit softer, like this. And see that little softness like that? I can't zoom in too far, it goes out of focus, but see that it'll make it stand out a little bit more from a textural standpoint and also a lighting standpoint against that gazebo like that. And if you get a little bit of this on the gazebo too, it just makes it look like the moonlight, the soft moonlight is on the gazebo too. But speaking of originals, people sometimes will, they'll just say, hey, what do you want for that certain scene? And I'll just say, I usually just say, well, why don't you just make an offer? People don't like to do that because I have no idea. They don't want to insult me or something like that. But, if people want something enough, I usually sell it to them. It's not like expensive or anything either. It's not like a dime though. All right, but see this right here, right in that tree right there? See how that makes it look a little bit... This is like kind of getting a little bit glary for you guys too, I think. But this is like how it looks like that. See, it gets a little glary like this on my studio right here. This is how it's looking like that. All right. Okay, now this should be nice and applied with soft textures. So let's go in and add in these crisp foreground images. Okay. Sometimes it's best to kind of leave your foreground till the end, just because these go in there and they're not coated with, you know, whatever 10 layers of other media. So you can stamp this on here, maybe even stamping it out in a, you know, like a VersaFine Clair or something like that. Actually, that would probably be the best ink right here. Well, the dye-based ink looks pretty dark too. But stamp it out with a, you know, nice dark tone. And things like this are nice and crisp right in here. Okay, now these are raised because it's, you know, the vinyl sticking out, so I'm not going to stamp it over the top of that because it's kind of ridged. Well, I stamped out one blade there a little bit. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. Let me try to do this right here. Yeah, okay, it goes right up in there. I guess that vinyl, it doesn't stick out. There's not like this big, you know, 1/4-inch gap or something like that between those reeds and the orb. Okay, like that right there. I'll show you what this looks like in the dark too. Hopefully it looks kind of cool. You know, and let's see right here. So I thought these would be good too with that full moon. I wasn't going to put the full moon in here, but these are these round orbs in here, and I thought it would pair nicely with another round orb in the sky. But okay, this is what I want to do too here. I want to add in some extra kind of foliage into my trees up here. And that's what I've been doing with these winter ashes on the past couple pieces that I did. So this one right here has all the white, and I think that looks really good, but maybe we'll add in some additional green in here. This one right here was the Art Foamies large winter ash. I don't know where it went. Oh, here we go. It's like right here. You can see how much bigger it is than the rubber version. Okay. So I think I might go with the 0.7 millimeter paint pen instead of the 3 millimeter. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'd like to go kind of bolder in here for up in the sky area than this 0.7, which is like these little dots down here. But we'll start off with this one right here. Do any of your family members know? My mom used to. You know, kind of when I first not when I first started the company in the 90s, but the family, my mom and I lived in like the Los Angeles area, and my mom, I grew up on the central coast of California, so whenever there was a convention, stamp convention in Los Angeles, she would just kind of, you know, see it as an extra excuse to come and visit her family, and then they would also help out in the booth, Stampscapes booth, for me. But then she started walking around the conventions, and then at some point in time, my mom and my dad became my like road crew. So the West Coast conventions, they would help me out at. So my mom, inevitably started walking around the shows, on break from running the cash register. And so she started getting into, different techniques, and she'd see the demonstrations at different booths. So, she bought a lot of that stuff. And then, of course, she had all of my stamps. But she would, yeah, she started doing, a little bit of stampscaping. Um, all right, so is that tree like that? See, isn't that kind of fun? So it brings up some of that texturing up in that sky area. It's kind of subtle too. Um, this white, again, as it dries, just like the white pigment ink, it kind of gets a little bit more see-through. But my wife is like a crafter, sewer, scrapbooker. Uh, she doesn't do like Stampscapes though. Not really her thing. Occasionally we'll borrow like pads or something. There's a lot of like stuff that I didn't have, like embossing powders and heat guns and stuff like that. So it's like if she wasn't using it, we borrow each other's media, or if it's like, hey, she's got a like bunch of papers being a scrapbooker. So if I needed or need like I don't know, like red paper, for like mounting a card on or something like that, she'll usually have it like, big selection of colored papers, because seeing stamping, we don't, we're not buying like, like purple cardstock or something like that. But sometimes it's like if I need it for something kind of like a, scene or something, again, like if I'm mounting a card onto something. I want I want to frame it off with a certain color that I just don't have. She'll usually have that in her paper stash. All right, so there we go with that. So it stands out a little. Can you see the difference between this one and this one right here? So this one's been drying for like a couple minutes, right? That tone in there is going to be how those look right in there. It's a little bit too much in here in terms of this texturing though. All these little dots, it's like crawling with a similar size texture. So that's where kind of going with a larger form kind of will balance everything out a little bit more. How about you, Janet? How about any of you? Any of you have like family members that that weren't into stamping, but you got them into it or anything? Maybe you were giving them cards or something like that, or um, I know some of you told me that uh, I don't know, someone I thought some people might get into stamping through kind of the receipt of cards where it's like, hey, how did you do that, type of thing. It used to be more so like a lot of people got into rubber stamping. Okay, so adding a few of these larger dots. See how it varies it in there a little bit more? Um, it's when in the early days of the rubber stamping hobby, not the super early days like going back to the 70s or something like that where there were very few, but when the popularity began to explode, it was embossing that got people into it. So suddenly people are getting these cards and it's got this raised, kind of objects and things like that on there, and gold and silver and, whatever, black, and, and they see it's a handmade card. Suddenly a lot of people wanted to get into it that weren't into it, and it was just from like embossing. It's like this, performing this like magic trick. on their pieces, and it was fun and relatively easy technique to do. But that got a lot of people into it, which is really cool. Okay, so these are some little, like these little white blossoms on there. These little white dots down here kind of represent more of a like highlights or something like that. But now that we have these big blossoms up here, I'm going to put some of these larger fallen blossom leaves down on the surface down here. So it's kind of going in and adding in a little bit of a textural change, or not change, but variety down here. And let's do this. Let's put, let's go with pink up in that sky area. Baby sister into it, yeah. And youngest daughter, okay. Heat embossing was the gateway drug, yeah. Wasn't it? When did everyone get into stamping here? Did anyone get into stamping through like embossing? Phyllis did, maybe, right? Because you mentioned that. Sharita, I know you didn't. Sharita's a new stamper, but progressed like phenomenally fast though. Sharita got into stamping. It was like worked through like 20 years of stamping evolution, and it's seemingly like a couple months. Okay, here's some pink in here. I'll keep it a little bit. I don't know if it's subtle, but maybe it'll add to that kind of little magical kind of feel to it. But I remember going, and there used to be like like right now around this time, there's these like county fairs going on, and in like the Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego area, the county fair goes on at different times. I'm guessing they time it out where maybe those same vendors go from like San Diego and they migrate up, through Orange County and to LA County or something like that. But anyways, what I'm getting at there was this stamp booth at that county fair. Now I got into it, through my working for a Stamp in the Hand, but I had been to that county fair before and saw this guy, and mostly what he was doing, I was already working, in the stamping industry, but the thing that I saw him doing was, the thing that he was doing and selling the most were embossing powders, and that was the demonstration, because that was what everyone wanted to see. That was the magic. That was the magic trick. So that was really cool. And then we mentioned it in another live stream before, but I think it was I don't know what percentage. It was a huge percentage though. It's like if I asked someone or a group of students, in my classes, we're killing time before the start of the class. So, one of the questions, that would come up was how people got into stamping. And a lot of people, it was embossing early on, but it later turned into, the comment would be, Stampin' Up! Would be the other entity that got them stamping. But, those stamping parties, the Stampin' Up! Party, they might have been showing embossing too, but they were showing more of a variety of techniques. But in those late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, maybe, it was a lot of embossing. It was the embossing gateway drug. And it has like completely been forgotten, but I think it's people would still like embossing though, especially people new to it. All right, let's see what this piece looks like here. It's still a little bit wet. Yeah, okay, I got a lot of these little. I might need to tame this a little bit. It's kind of busy with some of this right in here with some of the additional white pigment ink, but I don't want to put that in there right now because some of these dots might be a little bit wet, especially the 3mm pen. Okay, so if I tap over it with a bunch of cotton balls, it might kind of blur that out. It doesn't take very long to dry, but I'm going to charge this up. I'm going to put this up into my light. Okay, now it's completely light here still. I'll try to darken the room a little bit, and we'll see if these glow-in-the-darks work, or can be seen a little bit. And closing my blinds here as well. Let me see. I need to turn off. There's a lot of lights in here. Charging up a little bit more. I have these lights in my studio here. These what do they call them? Soft boxes. Let me see if I can get this. Put this at a little bit of an angle because it's catching a little bit of a glare. Ah, there we. Oh my gosh! Look at that. That was really interesting. Okay, I'm still getting a little bit of lighting from my. I have this big window behind me, so it's getting a little bit of this light coming in. So I'll try to block it off here a little bit as much as I can. But anyway, it kind of like looks a little eerie. Like I need like a. Now we need like bats in here or something. Anyway, it kind of changes the spirit of it, even though these trees are kind of pink here. There's a little bit of a change of spirit of this piece, isn't there? Yeah, let me try. Here, I'm blocking off more. Here we go. There we go, like that. I don't know. I think that's kind of fun. You know, you might even be able to do, when I'm looking at this, there might be an incidence where you stamp out the pathway in the glow in the dark, huh? And that would be kind of interesting to do these paths or things like that in the glow in the dark vinyl. You know, these visual lead-ins like that, you know, on this glow in the dark vinyl, and I don't know, that would be pretty interesting. I'll do that maybe. I'm almost out of my glow in the dark vinyls, so I need to get some more. But I foresee myself using quite a bit more in the future. So if you ever do this type of stuff, if you anticipate using it, you know, I've shown this before, but I stamped out like a bunch of my moons and lanterns like that, and have it like that, and then I have my little. I haven't been cutting it out, but here's my tent here. These ones are not in the glow in the dark vinyl. I stamped these ones out on yellow paper, and then this one I toned in so that anytime I want to use these lanterns, here's a couple of my glow in the darks. I love using them so much. I like use these all up. Or like these are the paper lanterns from the last release, but you can put them in these little organizers. So whenever you want whatever lantern illumination, you're ready to go there. Sharita's the only one who enjoys crafting. You might get him into it, Sharita. You got all the techniques now. Or it's too bad because you'd be able to teach them. They'd have the perfect teacher for a lot of different techniques there. PSX did a lot of embossing in their old cat. What does that mean there, Linda? Or is that an auto? In their old... Oh, old catalog. Get it. Yeah. Got it. I'm slow. Sew and make quilts. See, that's my wife does that too. She didn't make the quilts, but she's like a sewer. or seamstress. Yeah. She says she watches all these videos these days of people like being self-taught and doing sewing, like YouTube, or I don't think Instagram. I think it's YouTube videos. But she knows how to sew though. So she says, I don't know. She seems to get like entertained from the comments that people make down below. Watch, people watching people do certain techniques. But she really likes the spirit of the newbies into sewing. How it's just like they don't know how to do it, but hey, that's not going to stop them. They're just going to, it's just trial and error. Fearless. Die cutting for applique, and it bloomed from there, only to be stamping for 3 years. Got it. Regular lighting, but also awesome in the dark. Yeah, isn't that fun with the dark there? This is not, you can't even tell that these are really glow in the dark elements in here, or really raised too much. So that's one good thing good about that vinyl. The vinyl is kind of thick, but it's not too thick where it kind of stands out kind of obtrusively, like a bunch of like raised things in this piece, which is kind of fun. A new sewing machine, but a new sewing and embroidery machine. You wanted to upgrade. The place where my wife gets her sewing stuff, it's like an independent store still, so you can go in there and upgrade or whatever, sell back. I think it's most a trade-in, for whatever the latest stuff. I think she sold her older one too. I think it was like a 10-year-old, or I don't know, something like that. But yeah, those embroidery machines are really something, aren't they, these days, with what you can do with them. Hello, Caroline. Did you miss the dark aspect of this? Is that what you mean? Or did you referring to something else? I'm with my hand and cross stitch. You wouldn't believe the feet and gadgets I have for sewing. Buy the best you can. They upgrade so fast. It's one of those things. It's like technology. That was the same thing with like cameras, and cameras, compact cameras, and also the SLRs. I think that's largely stopped though because of the smartphones and cameras. But cameras, it was just constant upgrading, and it was the megapixel race for a while. They got people on that, but anyway. Had to go get dinner. I will have to watch. Oh, so Laura, watch this right here. So here's that. And there. The glow in the dark, like that. It's a little glary, so what I did was I moved because it's still like daylight right outside, so clean, I don't have like blackout shades or, curtains here, so there's a lot of light coming in through the blinds here. But anyways, Laura, you got to get some of this. Laura, do you have that glow in the dark, vinyl printable sticker paper? Laura and her husband do a bunch of like astronomy stuff, so she needs the glow in the dark. We need different color glow in the dark stuff though for like nebula, nebulae, color whatever, coloration or whatever. Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So if anyone just joined in, we I stamped out like these orbs like this, and you can color them whatever color you want. I've been using a lot of greens because this this sticker paper, they only have like one type. If you get like glow in the dark paints, they come in like tons of different colors now. It's like a whole spectrum of colors. Or glow in the dark glitters. It's not glow in the dark glitters. It's the glow in the dark luminous powders. Okay, they have a whole like a spectrum. You can get like a set of like 16 colors. Okay, but the printable vinyls, They don't have like even the three colors. It seems like there's like a blue, standard greenish tinge, and maybe like a pink or something like that in some of the paints. But right now it's just the greens. But you can kind of color them different colors though. So I wouldn't just color them, you know, like one tone, but you can do whatever you want. But one of the things I did too, that's kind of fun. So there's these other orb types. Here, let me turn on my other two lights here. With these orb things too, these orb designs, like these types of things in here, like this one right here, I stamped it onto gold paper, okay, like that. And then I put that white pigment ink in the middle, and that's what this one is right here. So if you look right here, these are on the gold. Now I didn't want to cut out every little petal down there, so I just stamped that onto the paper, and then I just cut out the easy part right here. You know, it takes like, you know, a few seconds to cut out, and then that just goes right on the top like that. So, but and this one's on a mirrored reflection card, but you know, these can go in the landscape like this too. I would illuminate it with the white in the middle there, because you can see it's kind of dark, but if you do this, you know, it would capture that light like that. So I think, you know, you can go with the metallics too, or the reflectives, I should say. So stamp any of these types of things on a reflective material, either the silver or the gold, right? And then it'll flash that light as opposed to, you know, glow in the dark aspect of it. The one thing about if you stamp, you know, these things onto you know, a reflective like this, you know, the card might look like this, you know, where it's not reflecting any light. It's only when it kind of flashes, you know, at certain angles, you know, to the light will it stand out. But that, you know, it might have its own kind of look to it. So I'm going to experiment with that a lot more too with these elements in here. So, you know, it'd be kind of cool having that, you know, the golden light kind of, you know, coming out of these little lanterns and stuff like this, or these little floating candles here. I can't wait to use the candles right here. I was debating on how I was going to do this one. I think this one would look really cool, just to stamp these pieces out onto something. I mean, it could just be in the water too, and you just color them in too. But I was thinking if I want to do it gold, you know, glow in the dark, I just stamp these out, and this little part right here is easy to cut out. You don't have to stamp out this part and cut this part out on the glow in the dark paper. You stamp these out onto your surface, and then you just put these parts onto the you know, the top of it, so that area is going to be glowing, and that should be really fun. But yeah, the floating candles, I can't wait to use those too. So anyway, fun with glow in the darks. This one right here, you know, I think this scene looks okay, but I really like it, the glow in the dark aspect to it. I would tweak this a little bit more in here. I think I would have thrown in like a rock or something like this, just for the whatever the day, you know, in light viewing right here. I want a little bit more variation in here. I'd put a little rock or something like that to have a little bit of a lighter area in here. We came in here with the white pigment ink, but I think I'd like a little bit more variation in there. But this one, I don't know, this one was about these little glowing orb type of things, so I wasn't thinking about something like that. Glow in the dark paint and gloss. Okay. Yeah, I think maybe you mentioned that to me before, or someone did. The glow in the dark. Linda has a glow in the dark paint pen that she said works pretty good. In the move from Hawaii, I lost my large waves bead stamp. Oh no, had to buy again, and a few others. I did cut back on my crafts. Most stamps I donated, except for Stampscapes. Yeah, never let go of those Stampscape stamps. Those are the most important ones. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that though. I'm glad people really like those their Stampscapes stamps. I occasionally hear that from people. It's like, or sometimes people unmount their stamps too, and it's like I kept those, the Stampscapes ones on the wood if they had it on the wood or something like that. But yeah, you lost your large waves though. Yeah, we just did that large wave bead stamp with Janet there. I'm glad to see that one in use. I really liked using the that large wave and bead stamp in the paper, what paper merge what do I call that, image merging or paper merging, I forgot what I called it, where you cut out the wave, you stamp it out, color it in or whatever, but then you can cut it out and then you have any kind of background in the background. So I liked pairing that with like a photo of like clouds or something like that, which I hadn't really thought to do before. Let me let in some light in here again. But yeah, yeah, I kind of had a renewed, like a renaissance with that large wave stamp via the cutout, whatever technique. Which again, I haven't really done a lot before with Stampscapes. I'm not like, but now I'm like cutting out all the time. Like this glow in the dark stuff and stuff like that. But yeah, glow in the dark paint and gloss. Okay. Do you use that, Laura? I want to get some really good glow in the dark paint where I can splatter paint it in here. But I think when I splatter paint it, it's just so little that when I turn off the lights, it doesn't retain any light because it's just not thick enough or something like that. Glow in the dark paint. Caroline, I haven't used it for a while. This glow in the dark paint, I was doing my moons. I was doing like stamping out a moon and then adding this glow in the dark paint into it. I had the glow in the dark printable vinyl sticker paper before, but it was so expensive. It was like, I don't know what it was. I think it might have even been over $2 for a. It might have been more, like $3 for a like an 8.5 by 11 sheet. Okay, so for me, that wasn't quite practical. So I wanted to do the moons, but I was just painting them with this paint. But I'd have to put in like 3 layers of this to get it to retain enough of that light to glow for a while. But then I checked again, and the printable glow in the dark vinyl sticker paper, it was a different brand. It came down like by quite a bit. I think it was still like $1 a sheet or something like that. But there were more sellers of that type of material, and one of them was quite a bit cheaper than what I had purchased like 2 years previous or something like that. So it's right here. It is 6:30 p.m. for me here. Then this is I'm on Pacific Standard Time. So yeah, I come on about 4 p.m. for me Pacific Standard Time, just because I know a lot of people are on the East Coast. I mean, there are people in different areas of the world too, but like East Coast, they're 3 hours ahead of us. So yeah, I use it quite often. I plant like paste over. Oh, got it. Yeah. So it goes like so if you're doing it with a stencil, it's going on pretty thick then, huh, Laura? And you're getting enough of a light retention in that quantity then, right? But yeah, stuff like that. I don't know. I should play around with this a little bit more. So on something like this, gosh, if I was really good with like my brush work, but something like this, like it would be kind of cool on a surface like this to take some of this glow in the dark, if it would work at all. But I'd like to go in and just put like a thin layer, like a streak across here like this. So you'd have those kind of like little surface, I don't know, whatever you call it, striations or something like that, like that on here in a really thin layer. I don't know if it would read or not, in such a thin layer though, but something like that on this would look really cool because you'd have an extra additional surface layer on here, and that would make it look even more mirrored as a result, I think. But yeah, if I could get something like that going, that would be really fantastic. I guess it doesn't have to be, now that I think about it, I guess it doesn't have to be glow in the dark, but that would be extra cool. I guess you can go on there with, if I had like a silver, or like a silver for the silver surface, like paint even on there, that might be pretty interesting as well. Wanted to buy a patchwork Christmas tree to hang on all. I bought $400 sewing machine and made her one. So you didn't have to buy the Christmas tree, so you just spent the $400 on the sewing machine. And now you have the sewing machine, though, so you can do like however you want on that. Yeah. Got it. I unmounted most of all my stamps. See, Laura unmounted all hers except the Stampscapes. And she was moving, too. So she kept them on the wood. Well, like I said earlier on this video, I've been, for some reason, I've had these orders for wood-mounted stamps. I've been making more, but that, again, it's relative because I hardly ever make them. But I don't know, just people are, I don't know, getting into the wood, or yeah, this person that's ordering wood, she used to be a Stampin' Up instructor. So she's been around, or demonstrator. So she's been around, for a while. So she knows all the unmounted techniques and everything like that. But she still likes wood. But I made 40 cloud cumulus wood-mounted stamps that are going out to a wholesale client, that their customers want that wood-mounted version of it. But they also wanted the wood-mounted Seaside Cove, which is this gigantic stamp like this big. And I made like, I don't know what it was, 30 or something like that of those. I did a video of it, like a time-lapse video of the making of those stamps, because it was just so rare to make so many wood-mounted stamps, much less the largest one, maybe in the history of the rubber stamp industry. I don't know. Marks of Distinction also had a few really big stamps, but I know that Seaside Cove one's right up there. You can play like cricket with it. It's like a cricket paddle. All right, folks. Thanks for checking this out here. We've got the 5 orbs right here. So these ones going back in the distance like that. Again, that that vinyl, printable glow-in-the-dark sticker papers, really fun to use. You got to play around with it a little bit. See, I think I stamped this one out. I think I forgot, and I stamped this one out in dye-based ink, and it just went on really thinly. These are the impressions with the thicker, again, water-based pigment ink, okay? Versifine Clair is an oil-based pigment ink. This sticker paper, vinyl, printable vinyl, is made for water-based inks because it's made for your inkjet printer, your home inkjet printer, which I didn't even know what that type of ink was, but it is water-based though. So, keep that in mind. Do some test prints or see, find out what ink will work the best on it to give you the nice dark, thick impressions. I also usually re-ink my Brilliance pad before I stamp on here, but it does dry on here relatively quickly, even if you do stamp on there with a thick coating, because that emulsion is just designed to dry really fast. So anyway, it's fun stuff. Let's see. I thought it was overpriced. Caroline, you like the wood stamps, huh? Wood stamps are they're really nice in the hand like that. Just that wooden, natural material like that. Thanks for logging on, checking out the video as always, Bonnie. the orbs. What do I call this scene? The glowing orbs scene. Thanks, everyone. Hope to see you on the next live. I'll be trying to jump on and get another scene in here tomorrow sometime. I have so many stamps that I need to experiment with, and just I have like too many ideas is the problem. That's a good problem to have, though, right? we should do some embossing. I need to learn embossing. I tried it out a few years ago. I've done it years past, but I don't know, some of these little orby things like this would be probably pretty cool in embossing techniques. All right, good night, everyone.